Hi, everybody. Just giving you a chance to get into the room before we get started here. All right, I'm going to start with an introduction to One Health. Hi, everybody. I'm Reg Hoyt. I'm the co-chair of Animal Biotechnology and Conservation, and I'm chair of delval's One Health Working Group. And welcome you to the first seminar of the spring semester. And boy, we've got a great presentation for you to start off our seminar series. By the way, this is also January is One Health Awareness Month, so a good time to be starting our series. For those of you who may not be that familiar with the One Health concept, this is really just a concept. And the concept, probably put it in easier terms for most people, is we're on one planet. You know, we're in this, all of us together, whether it's animals, plants, the environment, people, uh, we're not going anywhere, you know, so we're all in this kind of together and having some awareness of how our actions impact others, whether that's other living organisms or whether it's the environment or whether other people, is probably a good way to live our lives. It's also probably a good way to live our lives and our careers if we pay attention to what other people have to say as well. So this is really kind of looking at this as a large system and that we need system approaches to dealing with the problems within our communities, problems within our region, problems nationally or internationally, depend on working with others and paying attention to other disciplines. We started this at Del Val some time ago. Back in 2015 was our first semester where we started doing these seminars, 6 seminars each semester. Our freshmen are introduced to the concept of One Health within the first year experience. And hopefully there are a number of courses like mine in which we not only encourage but kind of demand that people pay attention a little bit to this whole concept. And it is our hope that when you leave Del Val, you're going to be better fitted for going out into the real world and working on the issues that you're going to be faced with, and that you see yourself as being part of this system and working with others to try to deal with problems. We also encourage cross-disciplinary research, and these seminars are really part of our outreach. These are open to the community, and we encourage community members to attend. And each semester, we do have a large number of people who attend. Tonight, we've one of our partnership presentations with Island Press. We are extraordinarily lucky to have Dr. Bruce Hull with us from Virginia Tech, and I'll read from his introduction here. Dr. Hull is a faculty fellow at the Center for Leadership and Global Sustainability. He is passionate about system change and works on wicked problems in the transdisciplinary space where government, business, and civil society interact with environmental sustainability and economic development. He is a professor at Virginia Tech and was past president of the board of the Model Forest Policy Program, whose Climate Solutions University empowers communities to adapt to climate change. He is also one of the authors of this particular book, available from Island Press, Leadership for Sustainability Strategies for Tackling Wicked Problems. And Island Press has helped us with arranging this seminar this evening and are offering a 30% discount on the book. So if you enjoy this presentation, you'd like to have a good read, Island Press has piles of those. Go to Island Press, look up Leadership for Sustainability, and put in the code webinar and you'll get a 30% discount. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and welcome Dr. Hull.
Thank you, Reg. Good. Glad you used the systems word so many times there. Got a lot of a big advocate for systems change. One of the wrestling issues with the title of a book like this is, what captures the topic, and for a long time we're talking about leadership for systems change, and sustainability is such a big buzzword, and systems change is becoming one. Anyways, I want to talk about adding value to your life, becoming effective, the concept of leadership. But first, just a little bit about more about me. The Virginia Tech is a big land grant university in Virginia. We're nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, Southwest Virginia, but there's a center, an outpost up near Washington, D.C., actually inside the Washington, D.C. Beltway, and that's where the Center for Leadership and Global Sustainability is. And that's where I spend most of my time and energy. And it's a great place to work because we have access to a lot of big government, big business, and big NGO. And a lot of the lessons and experiences and stories that I'll be sharing come from where those three things intersect to address some of today's biggest challenges. Everything from climate change to food safety to biodiversity and agriculture. So again, what I want to talk about what employers are trying to hire for, what leads to career success, what increases career impact for for people in professions that are trying to impact things like climate change and biodiversity, and what will solve these sorts of problems. And my answer to these questions is leadership, right? So I'm going to spend a fair bit of time explaining what this concept is, with the hope of empowering you. You start to see some tools, some skills, some frames, some ways you can think about and expand your own skill set. I'll give you a couple examples, lots of more in the book, but mostly I want to get you thinking about how to do this, how to accelerate your career success, how to give the employer what they want, how to increase your career impact. Okay, so it's not just leadership, but I'm going to preface that by wicked. And I'm going to add this little parentheses here for the Anthropocene. So wicked leadership for the Anthropocene. That's pretty much what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So nice buzzwords in there, and I'm going to spend a fair bit of time defining each of these. And I'll begin with for the Anthropocene, because I think that's a concept that most of us are familiar with now, but it's important to think about time of humanity. I mean, this great graph by a book a couple years ago, Connectography by Conan, it just illustrates how fast things are changing, how connected we are, how much we dominate the biosphere, we humans. And this really is human time, Anthropocene, the time of humans. And it follows off of geology and historic times, and just is another way of looking at the Anthropocene. But if we go back 5 billion years or so ago to the beginning of Earth, at least if you believe in the science story here of creation, a billion years later or so was life. A billion years later or so, about 2 billion years ago, was the first cell, and change. You get up here about 200 million years ago or so, and this is when Steven Spielberg took his cameras back to film Jurassic Park. And somewhere around 5 million years ago or so is where humans and great apes started to descend. And really, maybe 200,000 years ago or so, humans were biologically equivalent to us. And it's just this last 12,000 years, the Holocene, where humanity really got traction, where we developed science, where we developed language, written language, where our institutions, a religion, where writing and roads and agriculture, where the world was stable enough for these institutions to begin. And now really everything's changing, right? We learned how to build and eat and govern ourselves in a very stable time in the Holocene. And now we're in the Anthropocene, which some call the Great Acceleration. And here's a pretty familiar graph, which has just about every socio and or environmental trend that you could imagine, and they're all arcing upwards. I'm going to show you a few of these in detail in a minute, but the trend I want you to see is that everything is going up, right? Starting somewhere around 1950. It's amazing how fast and rapid things are changing. Just the number of people living in cities, how much energy we use, how much water we use, how much fertilizer we consume, how much transportation we use, mechanical transportation, how much tourism there is internationally, how much carbon dioxide we emit, and then correspondingly, how much is absorbed by the ocean to create ocean acidification, methane emissions, another greenhouse gas, marine fisheries capture. This is one that kind of doesn't follow that trend, that it actually starts to dip back down. This is evidence both of the capture or the unsustainability, I guess, of most wild fisheries. Most of the fisheries are over harvested now, but it's even more so, it's an indicator of aquaculture, of how we're increasingly providing our fish through farming technologies. So much like agriculture provides that food for us, not from wild, but from domesticated crops. So we're a lot of aquaculture. Nitrogen, this is, pollution, runoff, whatever, and of course, deforestation. So the point is here that everything is changing, right? We're accelerating into the future very quickly, and the situation of tomorrow is going to be very different than yesterday, and that creates a lot of challenges. Some are good, some are bad. So I just want you to have this impression of the Anthropocene, of human development, of change, economic change, technological change, transportation change, environmental change, all really accelerating. And with great hope, we will achieve sustainable development, that we'll get richer and wiser and healthier and better educated, more equitable. That's the goal, right? And there are a lot of trends suggesting we're moving that direction. But there are pretty much some roadblocks, obstacles, if you will, and the bottleneck here. Everything from biodiversity depletion to food security and agriculture and energy access and climate change and the make waste linear economy in contrast to the circular economy. There's just any one of these really could derail human progress, is the challenge. So that's the Anthropocene, right? It's just a time of great change and great opportunity and great risk. And it's a time where we need to think differently about how we organize ourselves. And that then leads back to this bigger phrase of wicked leadership for the Anthropocene. And now I want to talk about wicked. Okay, so I've sort of defined Anthropocene. I want you to have that in your mind. But even more importantly, I want you to have this concept of wicked, because this is a sort of a diagnostic and help you think about how you might engage a situation, diagnose a situation, participate in a situation, because you need different tools depending on whether you're operating in a tame situation or a wicked situation. There are various ways to characterize this type 1, type 2, type 3 problems. We could add crises as a different kind of type of problem, but I just want you to think about these two different types. Tames are things that we've done before, like build a car, or take out even replace a kidney. These are very difficult. They're complex challenges, but they're tame. We've done them before. Wicked are things that we probably haven't done before. And I want to give you 3 dimensions, like climate change would be a wicked problem, poverty, education, inequity. And so the 3 dimensions of how to think about this is first of all, uncertainty. In a wicked problem, a wicked situation, it's incredibly uncertain. The situation you're in is unique. The problem has not been solved before. It's new. And so you're going to fail. We need to be curious and inventive. The system is open and dynamic. There are things on the outside that are coming from outside that are influencing the situation that you cannot control, can't even see. Lots of unknowns. In contrast, tame situation is something we solved before. We've built cars before. We've worked with medicine and kidney transplants and other sorts of things. The system it's a human, it's a factory, and a fair bit of cause and effect in terms of understanding how the system works. Another and even more challenging aspect of a wicked situation is that the stakeholders, the people who are engaged, are distributed far and wide, right? In a tame situation, they're in the same factory or the same community. They may interact face to face, and critically, there's a single authority. There's somebody with power in control, right? Everybody knows that that's the boss, and we're all connected. We're all making this car. We're working in this hospital, whatever. We're working on the transplant. In a wicked problem, people are distributed over. That might be a region. It might be a states. It might be a nation. It might be time zones. It might be countries. They likely will never meet. And no one has authority because people are in different countries working for different organizations, right? Many don't even realize they're connected. In this case, think about climate change. You know, this is the global situation. We don't meet everybody. Nobody can tell everybody what to do. And a lot of people don't even know they're connected to the problem of climate change. The third dimension here, the first dimension was uncertainty. Second dimension is distribution. And the third dimension is the differences among the stakeholders. Again, for a tame problem, it's a pretty easy situation in that people have similar motivations. Importantly, they agree on the problem, right? They know, okay, we want to build this car. We want it to be fast. We want it to be safe. We want it to be durable, reliable, cheap, whatever it is. We agree on the problem and the solution, how we're going to build it. And oftentimes you can identify some kind of optimum through science that resolves conflict among the stakeholders. But in a wicked problem, that's not the case. People have different motivations, and the problem needs to be co-constructed. They don't even agree on what the problem is. With climate change, I don't know, is it energy system? Is it agriculture? Is it decarbonization? Is it nuclear? What is the problem? People have to agree on that, and they have to agree on the solution. How are we going to do it? Is it going to be a market-driven solution, government-driven solution? We're going to invent technology? What is the solution? There is no objectively best solution, and oftentimes there's a loser. It's tragic in that we're not going to be able to solve this problem without some people losing. So there's uncertainty. There's a wide distribution. People are scattered all over the place. No one has authority, and there are lots of differences among the stakeholders. So that creates these wicked situations, and you need to be able to analyze the situation and say, okay, am I in a wicked situation? In which case, I need to think differently. I need different tools. I need to react. I need to respond to people differently in order to be effective. Okay, so wicked, we've got wicked defined here. I've got the Anthropocene defined. Now, the word that usually has the most interest is leadership, because that's sort of making change. That's being different. That's getting the job done. So I want to spend most of today talking about what leadership is, give you some different ways of thinking about it. And again, this is an attempt to empower you to not just to get some tools, but to think about the tools that you need and how you might use them. So leadership, I want to give you four dimensions of definitions. Maybe these really aren't different definitions. They're all different ways of thinking about leadership. Position, personality, outcomes, and practices. Some of this will be familiar probably, but some of it's going to feel a little new. So position is the most common issue, right? This one, just a lot of us think about leadership as somebody in charge, somebody with a position, right? As somebody who has authority over others, they're elected or whatever, or they got other forms of power, maybe charisma, or they're elected, or they got control over the budget, right? They tell us what to do, and then there are followers, the rest of us, that help achieve the vision of the leader. And there's a lot of important ways to be a leader of this type, a lot of good skills, but and a lot of good leadership programs that teach people how to do this. But that is basically ineffective for wicked situations, right? Because there's nobody who has authority over everybody else. And people are in different organizations, different states, different countries. Nobody has authority over everybody. There's nobody that has the vision. These problems like climate change, water scarcity, food and ag, poverty, inequality, the problems have to be co-constructed. People have to work together to figure out what the problem is and then agree on what the solution is and then get that done. So there's absolutely no way one person or even one small group of people can figure out what that is. This has to be done collectively. It's going to require people to agree in order to participate. So this idea of someone, a positional authority, positional leader is ineffective or wrong for wicked situations. Rather, and this is the part that a lot of people struggle with, we have to figure out how to lead from where we are. This is both sort of unintuitive, but also incredibly empowering, because in essence, what I'm saying is everybody here, anybody anywhere can be a leader, that we can affect leadership. We can affect change by leading from where we are. And I think that's the key. In the graduate program where I teach, this is our focus, is how do we lead from where we are? And so what does that mean? Lead from where you are. It means having a personality, first of all, that allows you to engage others. So I've talked about position and leading from where you are, and I'm going to come back and give you some specifics of that. Personality are having your own attributes, your own character. What are characteristics of people that work well in this wicked space? And I went and crossed out leader just to emphasize that we're really talking about leading from where we are in wicked situations. So these are more collaborators. What are characteristics of people that work well in this space? One is self-awareness. It's the idea that you know yourself. Not an easy task. You're working with people who are very different from you, who see the world differently, with different motivations, different skills, different expertise. And what you really need is a sense of yourself. You need to know yourself before you can begin to hear, listen, and collaborate with others, because they're different. You have to be able to explain yourself to them, and you have to recognize their differences as legitimate, and then you can start to collaborate. So self-awareness is key. Probably not as key as being kind. Again, we're going to be working with so many people. We're going to be making so many mistakes. We're going to be needing to expand our network. Having some kind of kind open-heartedness and being good to others and believing in others and being hopeful and engaging and welcoming is going to be a key characteristic of anybody effective in this space. Those, I think, are pretty obvious. There's two interesting tensions here that I'd like to draw your attention to. Humility and audacity would be one. Again, it's hard to overemphasize the importance of humility. The idea that somebody has the answer, or your profession or your area of expertise is going to solve the problem is naive. It's wrong, right? This is going to require very collaborative, transdisciplinary, trans-sector. It's going to require government, business, civil society. It's going to require all kinds of people, all walks of life, to solve these problems. And we're going to fail, because each situation is new. The situation is changing. It's very dynamic. Uncertainty is high. So we're going to fail quite a bit. So humility, we're going to have to be humble and figure out how to fail forward and fail often. But we can't be passive, right? We have to also have a little bit of audacity here. We have to kind of challenge the system, because we know the system and a lot of the institutional constraints and momentum are kind of business as usual, is going to make things worse. So we need to think outside the box and maybe tear up the box a little bit. So you need to be audacious as well as humble, a very sort of razor thin tension to walk. And of course, we also need to be curious. That is, because things are changing, because we don't know the answer. We never will. The system is changing. We're constantly in a state of learning. We're doing adaptive management. We're experimenting. We're learning from others. We're bringing others in. We're trying to gain their perspective. So constantly be curious, but also, dig in, go forward, be persistent. Or you're gonna have to try a lot. You're gonna have to believe in yourself, and try to make a difference and be persistent. So the folks that work well in these wicked spaces, these wicked situations, have these attributes. And if you don't have these attributes, and very few of us start out this way, you can fake it until you make it. You can aspire to exhibit these attributes by keeping them in front of you and say, am I being aware? Am I being kind? Am I demonstrating humility and being persistent and curious? And so fake it till you make it. All right, so talk about position. We have to lead from where we are. We need a personality that is open and kind and humble and curious. Outcomes. Often sort of the most interesting part of a presentation like this is this model of leadership called direction, alignment, commitment. And if there's really one piece of information that will give you some power and influence over situations. It's this. So let me pause here and drive this home. Pretty much any time any group has gotten something done, they've had direction, alignment, commitment. Pretty much anytime leadership has occurred, that is, a group has gotten together to solve a problem and act, they've had direction, alignment, and commitment. So any group, whether it's a student team working on a project, or a football team, or a university, or a nation, or a company, or the United Nations, if any organization, when they actually get together to get something done, they've had direction, alignment, commitment. This is the outcome of leadership, right? Direction being, have we decided where we're going, right? And you can add value to a situation, to your team, to your organization, by saying, hey, have we agreed on the goals, or are we going in different directions? Have we decided what counts as success? What is the direction that we're going? So what we need to set that. But that's not enough. Is there alignment? Have we figured out what needs to be done and then assigned people to get that work done? Are the tasks that need doing to achieve the goals, to get us to the right direction, first of all, have they been identified, and then are all of them being claimed and acted on? Oftentimes it's just the few high status jobs, that everybody wants to do, and they're all doing those, and other ones, the low status jobs, or the risky jobs, or the difficult jobs, they're not being done. And so we need to see what needs to be done, and is everybody doing something, and are there things we need to being done. And then commitment, perhaps the most obvious, the will, that the belief, the willingness to help. The idea that I'm in the boat and I'm actually working on the oars, rather than sort of dragging my paddle, or sabotaging, or foot dragging, or saying I'm interested but not actually acting. So imagine yourself, you're with a team, group, or something, or an organization, and you say, hey, do we have direction? We decide what to do. All right, do we have alignment? Have we identified all the tasks, and are they all being done? And is everybody really committed to sacrifice a bit for the greater good and trying to make this happen? So you can add a lot of value to the situation by just asking these questions. And of course, there are all kinds of tools, and the book goes through a lot of tools that help build direction, alignment, commitment. So this notion of leadership, leading from where you are, this is the model, because we can all help our organization, help our team, help our nation get direction, alignment, commitment. And we can figure out where we fit to promote direction, alignment, commitment. Okay, so I've talked about position, not leading from where we are, but rather, leading from where we are rather than a positional authority. So we need to lead from where we are. We need a personality that's kind and curious and persistent and humble. We want direction, alignment, commitment as outcomes. These are things that you want to promote. And then there are just a gazillion practices, right, that make things happen, that promote direction, alignment, commitment. And you can in the programs where I teach, in the leadership and sustainability programs at the Center for Leadership and Global Sustainability at Virginia Tech, and other programs, is we spend a year just going through a lot of these techniques. The book has a bunch of them summarized and illustrated with case studies. And I just want to share with you a few. We can't go too deep here, but again, my purpose is to help you diagnose your situation, empower you to figure out how can you be more relevant to your employer, how can you be more effective in your career, and how can you maybe address and be more impactful in trying to address some of these bigger wicked problems we have, like climate change or biodiversity loss and what have you. So these practices, I've got them organized here at different levels of social organization, from individual up to network. And I'll just walk through this really quickly, and then I'm going to end with some examples over here in red. But at the individual level, right, leadership practices that you can work on individually are the self-awareness and personality diagnostics, and knowing your own biases and values and paradigms and what have you. It's hard work. Often requires a coach or some external feedback so that because we're all blinded by our biases. But you've heard probably of emotional intelligence and influence style. Of course, we also need to be good scholars, to have integrity, and it's hard to overestimate the importance of having confidence to engage in all these tasks. And have a good network, writing skills and speaking skills. And then my favorite, is just fake it till you make it. You can keep trying and you'll learn by doing here. So, there's some practices, and they're kind of obvious individual sort of practices and familiar. The team skills, it's hard to overemphasize how important these are. I mean, this is teams are how most things get done, right? Working on interdisciplinary and cross-sectorial teams. How do you make an effective team? What makes a team function well? Some good literature on that. Review some of that in our book. But how do you build trust and psychological safety? How do you work with a diverse team? How does that team get principles? How do you give feedback? The situation behavior impact model of giving effective feedback to somebody so that they know how to improve or whether they need to improve. How do you do after action reviews and manage conflict and projects and whatnot? There are all kinds of practices that help build these outcomes and make teams effective so that they can solve problems. And once you have a high functioning team, man, you are ready to hit the road and get some action. Organization, this is usually the focus of MBA, Masters of Business Administration, where your organizational change, where you've got a bunch of skills and tools that help you manage an organization. But most of us work in organizations. Most organizations are the things that solve big problems. So you're talking about a business, an NGO, or government agency, whatever, an organization. And so what leadership practices promote directional alignment, commitment there? And I want to end here. I've got a couple examples, so I'm not going to end immediately, but I just want to. This is where I want to focus, I guess, at the network level, because to me, this is where most of the exciting work is happening. This is where some of the most consequential work, and this is where businesses are collaborating with other businesses, collaborating with government agencies, collaborating with NGOs, environmental NGOs, or social NGOs in order to solve these big problems of climate change, inequity, food scarcity, biodiversity loss, whatever. It's amazing how exciting this space is, where these big problems are being tackled by these organizations that are collaborating in this cross-sector space. And these big problems like climate change are bigger than any sector, right? Business can't solve it by itself. Government can't solve it by itself. NGOs can't solve it by itself. So we need organizations from all three sectors to figure out how to work together to solve this problem. And there are just a bunch of examples, and the book focuses mostly on these examples, on these tools. Collective impact, incredibly powerful. I don't know if Rich Dooley was here. He said he was going to be here. Rich was as a community energy planner, worked with Arlington, Virginia, and Arlington used collective impact as a leadership strategy to deal with energy security, reduce emissions, and improve energy equity in the county, whole county of Arlington, using a community energy plan. But I want to talk about identity management and transparency and accountability, and give you just a couple quick examples, some little fodder, a little something to think about. Maybe we can dig into some of these other ones if you want in the Q&A. So let me begin with the transparency and accountability. And this may not seem familiar, but I bet as I keep talking, it will become familiar. You'll see it, and once you know it, you'll see it a lot. This idea of sunshine, if you will, shining sunlight on a situation makes people start to become accountable. And when people become accountable, they start to feel responsible, and then they lead to action. So how do you use this model of transparency and accountability to affect systems change, to affect some of these big challenges that I'm talking about? Let me give you an example. Sort of if you're think about climate change or the energy transition, clean energy or water. If you are concerned about these sorts of issues, promoting clean energy, reducing emissions, or managing stormwater and urban water systems in drought and what have you, or floods. One place to focus are buildings, right? Buildings are huge consumers of all those things, particularly materials and energy, right? And so in terms of carbon and emissions, buildings 40 to 80%, depending on the community, of carbon emissions associated with the building materials, and then the maintenance, electricity, air conditioning, what have you. So how can you affect a building? All right, how can you affect all the buildings, many buildings, right? In a city, in a region, across the nation, across the world, if you're interested in affecting energy and water systems. I'll give you an example of how this transparency and accountability model works. And this is a classic wicked problem, right? Because there are so many different stakeholders, right? It's there, the people are investing in the buildings. There are the managers of the buildings, there are the designers and engineers of the buildings. There are utility companies that are connecting to the buildings, the builders, the regulators, the people that own it or live there or rent there or visit there. They all have different motivations, right? They all have different and sometimes conflicting things with regard to energy and water use. So how do you affect such a wicked problem? Well, here's the transparency and accountability approach is focusing on, and particularly focusing on investors and money, right? Money drives a lot of things. And so here is connecting investors and capital to the design and management of buildings. The example that most of you know probably is the LEED, the Green Building Council, the U.S. Green Building Council, where you've probably been in. Maybe you're in now a LEED Gold, LEED Platinum, LEED Silver. It has met criteria. There are published criteria about what it takes to energy efficiency, water use, transportation connectivity, all those things. And if you meet this criteria, you are awarded the LEED certification, and it influences some people, right? Some buyers are interested in LEED certification, not too many investors. Some tenants, some buyers, some companies would want LEED certification. Maybe a university purchasing office would want their buildings to be LEED. But it's not a very powerful tool. It's much more powerful. We can start to connect the outcome of those buildings, the carbon emissions, the carbon risk, the water risks, and what have you, to investors. And that's where something like SASB, the Sustainable Accounting Standards Board, which is creating ways for accountants to measure, right, and make transparent the connection between these sustainability, water, climate issues and the investment outcome. How safe is my investment? How much risk is in my investment? How much profit is associated with my investment if I've managed water well, if I've managed greenhouse gas emissions well, if I've added solar or wind or whatever it is? What are the connections to the investment portfolio for these sorts of sustainability, climate, or water issues that we want to affect? And so showing that connection, making them material in the language of investment and business management, making those things material to investment. And that's what SASB does. And there's a lot of work by SASB for all kinds of indicators, drawing the connection between these environmental or sustainability outcomes and investment inputs. And then the big dream here, and which seems the U.S. Security Exchange Commission, the SEC, is about to, maybe has recently released some new rules about reporting, corporate reporting. And the legion of accountants and engineers and lawyers that are paying attention to these 10K annual reports or quarterly reports, because these have to be open, transparent. They have to tell investors the impacts of climate change and climate risk and whatever it is that you're interested in on their investment portfolio. This is incredibly powerful way to change the way buildings are thought of, designed, managed, and owned and operated. Because once the investors start putting their power into it, then the builders and the architects will respond, and the managers will respond, the tenants will respond. So here by making something transparent, making it, in this case, making the climate risks and benefits of solar or wind or floodplain or whatever it is, making it transparent to the investor, it starts to hold the designer, the owner, the builder accountable, right? And that accountable, once you're accountable, then if you can choose to be responsible, you can choose to start taking actions to address that accountability. Because once the sunlight is shining on you, once people see you, then you might want to change. So where else do we see this? The WRI, the World Resource Institute, is a classic example of a program that uses this. Their Forest Watch program, the aquifer, the flood and water issues, the Systems Change Lab. I mean, they have indicator after indicator after indicator of deforestation or water shortage or whatever. And so it's shining a light on the problem. And by shining that light on the problem, it's people that are causing the problem are being held accountable, and they can choose to become responsible and then have an action. So this is a way to coordinate people that otherwise don't even know they're being coordinated by transparency and accountability. You see it everywhere. You'll see it in certification, standards, and all kinds of other things, all the kind of other metrics. So that's kind of a fun one, but it's kind of nerdy and technical, and requires accountants and lawyers to make it happen. But it's incredibly impactful and will change whole industries. Identity management is another fun one. And here we're talking about the basic truth of humanity is that facts don't change behavior, right? I can talk on and on to you about the impact of beef or food on climate change. You know, I can tell you that cattle are the third, if they were a country, they'd be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases, right? I can tell you that we basically hammer the biosphere to make our food system. Most every place that's arable that we can plow is plowed or grazed, right? Everything else is desert or ice. There are some forests, but if we cut down those forests, then we lose the lungs of the earth and all the carbon and emissions and biodiversity habitat. Pretty much everything. It's like the equivalent of North America and Africa. All that land is converted for agriculture. Half of it is for livestock. It's to feed or to graze livestock. So maybe let's change our diet, right? So if you're worried about agriculture, if you're worried that, if everybody ate like Americans, everybody in the world ate like Americans, there's absolutely no way we could grow enough beef, enough hamburger. And the carbon emissions and the soil erosion and the biodiversity loss would be enormous, right? So how do you change the system, right? How do you work this? And it's no easy task, right? Because diet is deeply tied to our identity, but the producers and the consumers, so strong traditions here. Stakeholders range from the chefs to the farmers to the consumers to the food industry executives that work in grocery stores or manage stofers or whatever else where you get your food. It's an amazingly diverse group, right? And so here's some innovation by a guy named Arlen Wasserman, and his organization is Changing Tastes, and you can Google this. And there's also a movement called Plant Forward, and the Culinary Institute of America. These are sort of three organizations that are promoting this effort to kind of address some of these big impacts of agriculture and make it more sustainable. And they used an identity management strategy, right? And so I've defined the problem. Now let me define this leadership strategy. What it does is it recognizes that facts won't matter. And so what matters is our value, our identity, or our wanting to belong to a group. Everybody has a social identity sort of driver in them. And so what they targeted were celebrity chefs. And they tried to get some celebrity chefs to start to think plant forward, which is to make meat on the periphery of the meal and make the plant or the plant protein the center, the forward thing that people think about. They tried to encourage some celebrity chefs to do this and compete and win some awards and feel, like foodies and other chefs said, hey, I want to be like them. This is a group I want to belong to. These are the elite. These are the leaders. This is what they care about. I want to do it too. There were competitions among even university kitchens and hospital kitchens around the country. Chefs compete. There's an annual awards banquet, and people learn and get rewarded for they teach their recipes and their techniques. And their restaurants have signs, and you can join that group and get a sign. You can be a member of this community, and it changes you change your menu so that you don't describe the meat oriented, rather you describe the taste and the texture and the health qualities of it. And people buy stuff for not because it's meat or meatless, but they buy it because it tastes good, and there are recipes, and then you start to work with some of the big food corporations and grocery stores, and so that they change their things. And so this is really transforming our diet. You can see beef and other kinds of things changing in how much we eat in our country and other countries. So this is a form of getting directional alignment commitment through a very dispersed cross-sector collaboration. And nobody knows, except for Ireland, and now you knows that it's done for food and food and ag and biodiversity and water and climate. Okay, so I've been going on for 40 minutes or so, and let me just wrap up and give you sort of the why and the what of what I talked about. Wicked systems. I put systems in this one. Leadership for the Anthropocene. Systems. It's hard to overemphasize how important systems thinking is. So I've defined these terms, and I've kind of given you a few examples. So the Anthropocene is a time of great change. Everything is new. Conflict is high. The challenge of dealing with uncertainty is extraordinary, which creates these wicked problems where stakeholders are widely distributed, often without anybody having authority over them. Often people don't even know they're connected to the problem, and they've got different motivations, different skills, different resources, different time zones, and all this has to be coordinated in a situation of high uncertainty. So the problems are wicked. And then leadership, an approach to dealing with these sorts of problems, with these wicked problems of the Anthropocene, is to lead from where you are, right? Positionally, everybody's going to have to figure out a way to lead from where we are. We're going to have to figure out a way to be kind and humble and audacious, and curious. These are attributes we can cultivate. Critically, we can work to promote directional alignment commitment. We can ask questions. We can use tools. We can try to persuade our bosses, whatever it is, to promote direction, alignment, and commitment. And there are lots of practices that work towards helping us do this. And they work at the individual level, they work at the team level, the organizational level, and the few examples I gave you were at the network level. So that's the summary of the talk. Happy to dig into any of these topics or other topics that maybe I sparked. Again, my name's Bruce Hull. You have my contact information here. Happy to answer any questions you have by email as well. There are graduate programs around the country that sort of help build these skills. And one of them is where I teach at the Center for Leadership and Global Sustainability at Virginia Tech. So, Reg, spark any questions? I see we don't have much in the Q&A, but maybe you thought of something.
Yeah, we can start out with what we have here in the Q&A, and folks can add their questions to Q&A, and they're starting to come in. So our first one is from Anonymous, and it says, at a recent national event, there was a lot of pushback on the need for alignment. They instead talked about how a constellation of efforts can be equally successful in advancing our goals. In nature, too. You see duplication of efforts and diverse tactics that are not aligned, but that are highly successful. Can you discuss why you think alignment is so important within larger fields, such as addressing climate change and equity?
Yeah, it's an insightful question because alignment is deceptively difficult. You'd think it would be pretty straightforward if you could decide what needs to be done. People would step up to do it. But the world is pretty complicated in that way. If you get direction and commitment, that if people kind of know what they want and they're committed to do it, they may not be aligned. And part of the reason is institutions, organizations, NGOs, businesses, they've made a reputation for themselves doing something, right? And so you can imagine working in a community and trying to do, in this case, working with biodiversity or something, worried about environmental issues. NGOs compete for the same funds to do the same thing, and only one of them is going to be able to do the work in this for this project, and that leaves the other one out. So they will fight against each other. The businesses likewise, they've got market share, they've got a way to solve a specific problem, and so you might have multiple people trying to do the same thing, and then there are these other sort of high risk, low reward activities that nobody wants to do, or they're low status, so they don't get pats on the back, so nobody wants to do it. So how do you move people around and convince them to do these either high risk, low reward, or low status tasks? It's a challenge, and it's why a lot of stuff doesn't get done, right? It's alignment is critical, and the easiest way to address it is just to identify it, ask questions, and get people talking about it. Otherwise, it's kind of under the rug. It's behind the scenes, and it never and you'll end up not getting anything done. So that's I think it's a great question, Reg. Yeah, the alignment is critical and difficult.
Our next question is from Tanya. Can you cite some examples of groups that are leading in the manner you describe, intentionally or not?
Yeah. Well, there are. I gave you two there. The Plant Forward community, and the Changing Taste group led by Arlen. I would say in terms of climate change, there are a lot of communities that are successfully implementing community energy plans, using these tools like this. A lot of communities doing green infrastructure as well. A lot of changes in the food system. So I would say the examples are almost endless. So it's what amazes me about working inside the DC Beltway with all the big government, big business, and big NGOs coming in is they come into the classroom where I teach. I invite them in to give us case studies, and they're telling me what they're doing, and I'm going, you're doing that? That is just so cool. It's amazing. And that's what actually started me writing this book, is just a case study after case study after case study of different organizations doing it. So leaders like World Resource Institute, different organizations use different tools. And I think once we learn to look for them and see them, we can be even more effective at improving them. And so part of the purpose of the book is to help people see what they're doing, help them see what the tools they're actually using. So there are a lot. So some of them are. I like the thing in parentheses there, intentional or not. I think a lot of people are doing this not by dumb luck, but it's because they've accidentally worked their way in through trial and error to these strategies. And I've got a name for them, and I can point and say, hey, there's 10 other people doing the same thing. You can start learning from each other. So that's the power of starting to see some of these ideas. A lot of what we do is not intentional, even if it's successful.
I think one of the great leaders that we've seen in the fall One Health seminar series was at our own community, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. We've got citizen committee members who are really pushing forward the agenda of addressing climate change at the community level. And actually, I believe that Tanya is a member of that community as well. So she's demonstrating her leadership. Claire has a question. It's what advice would you have for environmentalists entering the trade, like our various students, who are concerned it might be too late to make change or that leadership will never move in the right direction?
Yeah, a good question, a familiar question, and I would guess I would ask you to think about the some of the definitions here. First of all, I would say it's definitely not too late for change. I mean, there's so much change happening. Fortune 500 companies are moving big time. Government agencies, the IRA, there's so much going on. And so I'm actually amazingly optimistic. Even though the challenges are huge, there's a lot of money to be made, a lot of motivation, a lot of political will, a lot of people solving these problems. And so my advice would be to train up in some aspect of it. If you're into clean energy, become an engineer or battery person, or figure out how to install solar cells or whatever. There's just a lot of activity. There's going to be trillions of dollars of transition over the next few decades. Likewise with water, likewise with food, and biodiversity. There is amazing momentum. Was it fast enough? We won't know. I think it's moving in the right direction. The economic incentives are there. The policies are starting to get behind there, and so we're moving in the right direction. So there's a good reason to be hopeful. But I wouldn't blame it on leadership in terms of the last phrase there is will leadership never move in the right direction? I mean, that's the definition of leadership where it won't happen unless there's somebody out in front, right? There's a leader, there's a Joe Biden or a Donald Trump or a Elon Musk or something leading the way. That's not going to work in these situations. Leadership is all of us, right? So this is us. This is you leading from where you are. What can you do to start to affect these things? One is to know that this change is going on and believe that you can make a difference and have some sense of self-efficacy. And then three, see some of these tools that are out there and use them and to become effective and increase your career success and your impact on these issues. So I think there's a lot of reason to be hopeful and engaged. It really depends on willingness to engage. So I would encourage you to feel like you're in the right spot at the right time to have impact.
I like that idea of engaging. I think that we all need to engage. We're all going to make mistakes, but if we don't get in the game, we're definitely not going to make any change. So, Ben has a question. When considering the leading from where you are model, is the role of the follower left obsolete if everyone leads from their position? Or perhaps does the collaboration of entities at the network level render each party a follower and each other with respect to their areas of expertise?
Yeah. Well, I would sort of try to break down the areas of expertise, right? Because everybody's going to be expert in something different. We got to figure out some way to collaborate across that. Again, I want to challenge you to kind of abandon the leader-follower model. If you think of leadership as being done because there's a leader and the rest of us are following, then to be in a wicked situation where that doesn't work, you start to really get confused and say, what can I do? It's hopeless, it's chaos, but you need to just jettison that paradigm and try to get a new paradigm, which is leading from where you are, right? And then everybody becomes a collaborator. I think you used the phrase collaboration in your question. And so how do we collectively get directional alignment commitment? Because that's the task, right? We need our entity, our learning community, our physical community, our business, our agency, whatever it is, our partnership to get directional alignment commitment. And that's what we need to work towards, right? And there are all kinds of tools to do that. But we in some ways we're all leaders and all followers if you want to try to use that model. But I don't think that's a very effective way of thinking about it. I think it's collaborators, right? We're all leading from where we are. And that's really the only way, right? It's the only way we're going to solve these problems.
And we're about out of time, so I'm going to jump to the last question here. In light of the current politics in the US, how does a leader move forward when there is a lack of agreement on what should be the obvious facts of the situation?
Yeah. I wish I had a quick answer for misinformation and fake news and political polarization. Um, uh, these are all, I think, bigger challenges than climate change and water scarcity and biodiversity decline. That is, the political polarization and fake news and outrage culture on social media is a real challenge. And to not have facts to base collaboration on, that is to have different facts, makes it really difficult for anything to work. So there are sort of two pat answers here. I mean, we need to solve all these problems, obviously, but one for the most importantly, work on some sense of hope and self-efficacy and engagement, and keep working to try to make a difference. Right? If we give up, if we're pessimists, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we got to believe we can make a difference, and that requires some fortitude, some humility, some persistence, and curiosity. You know, it requires you working on those attributes. Secondly, I think a coalition of the willing. There's enough folks that believe and in the fact-based reality. There's enough folks committed to fix some of these big challenges. Certainly, climate, water, ag. Some of these I've been talking about just because they're so consequential. They have such impact on money, on health, on welfare, on humanity. A lot of businesses, a lot of government agencies, a lot of NGOs. So there is a sufficient coalition of the willing, even though we may not be able to reach everybody. It's not going to be consensus. Doesn't need to be consensus. It just needs to be enough of us to get it done. And I'm pretty hopeful that we can do that if we've got the right tools and willing to try. Self-efficacy, have the will, have the commitment.
I like that coalition of the willing. Let's get the willing together and
Yeah.
make some changes. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for a great presentation. I want to remind everybody that Bruce's book is available from Island Press, and that if you go to Island Press, look it up, and you go to check out, if you put in the code webinar, I've been suggested it be all caps, but I think it works either way. You'll get a 30% discount on the book. Thank you all for coming this evening. I hope you have a great evening. And Bruce, I really want to see more of your work. And maybe in a few years, we can have you come back and talk some more about what great strides have been made.
Yep, lots of great examples out there too, and I encourage everybody to go looking for them. Many are documented in the book, but they're just everywhere if you know where to look. So I think there is reason to be hopeful, and I'm delighted, Reg, that you've got this One Health group to start to think about them and inspire people for change. So carry on all your good work, folks.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Bruce. Have a great night, and good night. We'll see you at the next One Health seminar. Bye-bye.